The Silent Hill franchise never had it easy, going through a decade-long hiatus and multiple failed projects. Yet in 2024, the Silent Hill 2 remake, developed by controversial outside developers, somehow defied the odds and became a hit among critics and fans. While not 100% faithful to the original, it still successfully brought the formula of the old trilogy into a modern format. Then, just 1 year later, a brand new third-person entry, Silent Hill F, showed the potential of continuing a winning streak. It brought in famous horror anime writer Ryokishi07 and returned development to Asian developers who took the series out of the eponymous mountain town in America into rural Japan of the 60s. To get it out of the way, this absolutely is a Silent Hill game. Because of the different backdrop, it naturally feels different from the outside. They also took away all the guns for the first time, and the story doesn't really connect to the original background lore. However, it still contains all the series' core elements. Personally, I'm not that hung up on the lore anyway. Silent Hill 2 was also a standalone story, and the canon origins of its psychological horror didn't really matter. Also, while the franchise had many half-baked experiments, the original formula too became stale back in the day. So it was a sensible move not to follow up a remake with another remake or a copy of that. At the same time, Silent Hill F still has that spooky fog in which the trauma and other burdens of the characters materialize as distorted monsters and cryptic riddles. You explore small maze-like areas, solve puzzles using clues in the environments, and either eliminate enemies along the way or sneak past them. But unlike other Resident Evil clones, the world is more surreal and will often change in subtle and less subtle ways. The same doors might suddenly lead to completely different places, locations might feel more and more inexplicably run down, and puzzles might contain small hints about the true background of the story. As an old survival horror fan, Silent Hill F is a game that captivated me enough that I played it for hours on end. It felt familiar but also refreshing enough at the same time. The old streets and forests and foggy mountain paths look wonderfully eerie thanks to a tight art direction which is drenched in Japanese mysticism and ancient folklore. And even if the soundtrack is a far cry from the originals, the music still underlines this mood in an effective way, including more traditional Japanese instruments and choirs. But these environments also feel rewarding to explore. The puzzles hit that perfect balance. They aren't obvious, but if you pay attention to the clues in your surroundings, you can solve all of them on your own. I thought that the assignment pop-ups were a little intrusive, and the map is slightly more linear than in the remake of 2. But overall, it doesn't have overt hand-holding, no NPCs that spoil puzzles, which makes investigations much more rewarding. I also like that your teammates will disappear after a cutscene, which fits the spooky themes and also avoids tedious walking and talking sections. You can venture off into multiple optional areas, which are full of extra info and hints that might relate to the history of the place and the characters. All in all, it's a very well-rounded world to explore. The game then often switches to a dark dream world, a temple complex where protagonist Hinako is under the observation of a mysterious fox guy who might have weird plans for her. This is different from the rusty demon world of previous installments and also from other survival horror games, making it much less predictable. In fact, Silent Hill F has some surprising twists in store, and the deliberately convoluted narrative will successfully keep you guessing until the end about what all this is about. So both the investigations and the storytelling kept me absorbed until the end. Sadly, the developers still fell into a few fatal traps and tropes which bring this title down a lot, to the point that I've had enough of it after finishing NG+. For one, it had a couple of smaller hiccups, like a few weirdly hackneyed jump scares, Also, while the story contains interesting themes and twists as you move along, following yet another batch of high schoolers still comes with all the cliches, jealous girlfriends, bullying, and so on. If you followed other Japanese media for a while, these high school tropes feel beyond stale. The ending recontextualizes a lot of things and is strong enough that I won't complain about the story overall, but still. The big one though is the combat system. In theory, the developers have done a good job of transforming classic survival horror with limited ammunition into this raw melee game. Each weapon has a limited lifespan, and Hinako has a stamina bar. There are evasion bonuses and every enemy can be stunned if they show an opening in their defense. However, these weak points are only visible for sometimes less than a second, and if you're close enough to the enemy, making it inherently dangerous. At the same time, there's a focus mode which makes counterattacks easier and adds a charging attack. But this in turn requires mental health. This means that in all fights you have to decide whether to sacrifice a little sanity or risk a few more hits, whether to repair your weapon or try your luck with an escape maneuver, or whether to use your stamina boost or save it for later and rely on healing items instead. Prior to its release, there was the fear that it would play like a Souls game. It's arguably more generic than that, but some of the boss fights really look like straight out of an action RPG, which tonally doesn't fit at all. Speaking of which, the monsters look very generic. It's funny that they've advertised this title with the motto "Finding Terror in Beauty", because the creatures are nothing but disgusting. Veteran artist Ito was no longer on board, and it shows. His designs always felt more abstract than straight up gross, like here. Anyway, the real problem comes with the balancing. There are only two difficulty options for combat, a story mode and a hard mode for quote-unquote action horror fans. Personally, I disagree with story-focused modes in games that take out too much of the actual gameplay. And prior to playing Silent Hill F, I've heard multiple reports that the game is in fact too easy in the story mode, which is why I took the harder route, and it's fine during the first half of the game. It's tough and the enemies take a lot to finish and will hit you hard, making each duel intense, and again, it will force you to think about your resources. However, at some point the game clearly ran out of ideas or out of budget or both, turning it into a test of tedium. Here's a hot take: no one who gave this game a high score on Metacritic actually played it with the battle difficulty turned on. I just cannot believe that. The battle system isn't perfect to begin with, the camera is janky within tight corridors, and the actual attack options are sparse. Yet the final hours turned Silent Hill F into a full-blown hack and slash, with endless enemy waves and battle arenas, despite only featuring a handful of enemy types, which appear over and over. Some of the normal enemies already take a dozen or more hits, which is then multiplied in these battle arenas. Multiple times in a row you need to fight the giant blob gatekeeper, which will eat an entire weapon's durability because it takes so long. Whereas the Silent Hill 2 remake felt a little too bloated at around 15 hours, Silent Hill F at 10 hours almost feels longer because the finale is so tedious and repetitive. The enemy patterns also never change. That might be the reason why they kept hiding zombies on the ceiling or in other spots that are hard to see, which results in players taking many unpredictable and annoying hits. It's a shame because even during that time the rest of the game was still engaging enough that I wanted to know where it was going until the end. I've played hard action games and horror titles for decades, so I feel confident in saying that the balancing and focus here just feels whack. Rant over.